We recently talked about how the BRICS countries are trying to create a new exchange system to get rid of SWIFT, which is a Western-based system, and make it possible for trades to happen without using the US dollar or depending on US policies or penalties. A recent report says that Western financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank are putting in place policies to stop this growth, even though this project has gotten a lot of attention from the media. We talk about the new financial system in depth in this movie. We start by talking about its principles, its strengths and weaknesses, and why Western institutions are against it. Starting with the recent BRICS summit in Kazan pushing for a new BRICS-centered financial and economic framework that could be less reliant on the US dollar and go around Western financial systems was a big deal for Russian President Vladimir Putin. Russian President Vladimir Putin said that the current dollar-based system is being used more and more for political purposes, which hurts its credibility and stability. To fix this, BRICS leaders talked about creating a different cross-border payment system that would allow trade in local currencies and protect member states from sanctions and other outside pressures. One major suggestion: cross-border trades will be made easier by mBridge using distributed ledger technology, DLT. Red decreasing using solely standard financial tools. Putin said that this method could give developing countries a safe and cheap way to handle trade without using Western institutions. Removing the need for middlemen is expected to save billions of dollars every year. This bricks and mortar plan also includes growing mutual trade hubs for goods like oil and food to support fair prices that aren't affected by Western influence. What does mBridge mean? mBridge stands for Multiple Central Bank Digital Currency Bridge is a project that the Bank for International Payments, Innovation Hub, started with the help of several other central banks. The project's goal is to look into how central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, could improve cross-border payments by using blockchain technology. This would fix problems with current cross-border payment systems, which are often slow, expensive, and reliant on middle makers. List of banks. In order to make international payments faster and more transparent, mBridge wants to streamline cross-border payment processes and make them more cost-effective. They also want to make international transactions more open by using blockchain technology and giving banks of all sizes a platform to reduce fees. Using big correspondent banks and lowering the payment risks that come with delays and lots of middlemen. The technology system uses distributed ledger technology, DLT, more specifically blockchain, to protect and open interactions. Furthermore, the platform enables multiple cryptocurrency markets to work together without any issues, allowing for direct transactions between various national digital currencies. It also includes smart contracts that allow contracts to be automatically carried out when certain conditions are met, which increases trust and efficiency. Although mBridge isn't an official BRICS project, it is related to the BRICS nations. Argentina, Brazil, Russia, India. There are many ways that China and South Africa fit together. China's membership in the BRICS shows that the country wants to create new electronic payment systems that work across borders. As mBridge's goals suggest, BRICS nations want to become less reliant on standard financial systems controlled by the West. According to recent talks, other BRICS countries could join or create similar sites that would help member countries work together more financially. Russian President Vladimir Putin suggested building a BRICS bridge, using technology similar to mBridge to help BRICS countries run their own financial systems without having to rely on the US-controlled financial system. To become less dependent on the US dollar, BRICS countries have been looking into using their own currencies in trade with each other. However, while many players want to see more use of national currencies, countries like India don't exactly agree. South Africa and the United Arab Emirates don't want to upset the current dollar exchange rate. Finance-centered system. Because China provided the main technology framework for mBridge, Western policymakers are growing more worried. A top politician said that letting China lead such a sensitive project was a mistake. For those officials who are allowed to carefully lead changes in global financial systems, the possible effects could include challenging the dollar's dominance and improving financial inclusion by making cross-border payment systems better, which can help smaller economies and businesses by lowering costs and barriers to entry. Let us stop for a moment. Could you help us out? Do us a favor by clicking the like button and sharing your thoughts and comments in the sections below. Your participation helps us get more views and grow. Thank you. Despite the potential for changing international payments, The embargo also brings up important regulatory issues, such as making sure that international laws against money laundering and funding for terrorists are followed and dealing with cybersecurity threats. Managing the project's effects on global politics, especially those affecting sanctioned countries, addressing doubts about China's technology leadership and the possible abuse by sanctioned nations. And as a result of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, the US has used the dollar's dominant position in global transactions to enforce international sanctions. This has led some countries to look for alternatives that could protect them from US influence. While the dollar is still the main currency for international trade, there are worries that platforms like Embridge could be used to get around international sanctions, especially by countries that are subject to US sanctions like Russia. Carlston, the BRICS general manager whose time ends in June, told a group of 30 people in Washington, D.C., that the BRICS can't directly back any project for the BRICS because we can't work with countries that are under sanctions. It's worth noting that the Bank for International Payments is thinking about ending the Embridge project, which comes as a surprise after President Putin said that the technology behind it could be used to avoid sanctions and possibly compete with the US dollar. The initiative to achieve global financial supremacy was recently discussed by central bankers and finance ministers. According to people who were present at the private discussions, one of the options that was being considered was to end the project altogether. Despite this development, countries such as China and Russia are still looking into similar avenues. By establishing direct digital links between the central banks of participating nations, Embridge aims to make global money transfers possible without using the traditional correspondent banking system, which is heavily reliant on the dollar and therefore vulnerable to US sanctions. In January, the UAE's central bank announced the successful cross-border transfer of 50 million dirhams, $13.6 million, in digital dirham to China. By June, the BRICS had invited private lenders and other monetary institutions to join and carry out real transactions at the recent BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia. A system based on technology similar to Embridge was suggested by President Putin. He said that this would allow member economies to operate independently of the USC-controlled financial framework. Many participants support using national currencies more in bilateral trade, but countries like India are against this. Nigeria and the United Arab Emirates don't want to weaken the dollar-centered financial system. In the communique from the recent BRICS summit, the group talked about how bad illegal penalties were for the world economy and called for changes to be made to the IMF and the World Bank, but they didn't name BRICS Bridge. We really value you watching this video and joining us today. If our content spoke to you or inspired you, please show your support by liking it and following to stay linked with our community.